Welcome in to the I-80 Boys College Football Show. As always, I'm Christian Hunt, aka the savant of the channel, and that guy right over there is.
Just the peasant, Chris Vaca, aka. If you need a field goal kicker, by the way, this week, give me a call 402-310-1871. That's my phone number. Give me a call right there. I'll show up and kick some field goals for you this week because we all saw what happened last week, Christian. A lot of missed field goals, win games, send games into overtimes, and they were a lot of chip shots, man.
How many games was there? Like probably 3 or 4 games. I felt like that. Just a field goal kicker would have completely changed the complexion of those games. Dare I say?
I agree, man. It would have been a different story. But hey, you know what? It's college football. New week, new slate of games as well this week. There are actually some pretty good ones this week, Christian. I'm sure we'll talk about those here shortly. But I'm pretty pumped, man. We're getting to the end of the season here where there's a lot riding on these games, especially these big games, right? Conference championships, bowl bids, bowl eligible teams, you name it. This is the fun part of the season for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Chris. This is make or break. This is what is it? November mayhem, however you want to say it. This is where weird shit starts to go down in all of college football, right? And to me, this is where legends are made. Is the November push? Like, can you end it? End obviously the season off strong, right? You touched on it, Chris. Jordan the Corn's in here saying our kicker has sucked for 9 years. Hey, man. Just a kicker away. That's all you guys need, and you guys will get back to some glory. I like it, man.
Yeah, Nebraska's got more issues than the kicker, especially offensively. My God, we'll get into them later, though. Christian, what were we starting off with tonight, my man? By the way, thanks guys for joining. Appreciate it. Thank you for the.
By the way, Gator has a good point here. He says Toledo's 8-1, 5-0 in conference play. That's crazy.
They're one of the. I think them and Miami of Ohio are like the number 2 teams over there.
Really?
Yep.
They're the Georgia of Alabama, the Ohio State, the Michigan of their conference, respectively.
Yeah. Both those teams put up a lot more points than my Huskers do on offense too. So.
Jesus Christ!
I know I'm terrible. Sorry, Nebraska men. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, let's get into it here, Chris. Looking at a little Ole Miss versus Georgia, the preview. Why don't you start us off? Tell us about my beloved Bulldogs here, Chris.
Yeah, this one should be a good one, man. We got 2 top 10 teams here. Georgia 9-0 on the season, Christian, as we all know. I think they're one of 7 undefeated teams left, if I'm not mistaken, in the country in D1. Big win last week though against Missouri, right? It was a close game, halftime. Georgia did what Georgia does in the second half, pulled away. Just too much for Missouri in that 30-21 victory. So Mizzou, by the way, was rated number 12 in the country. That was probably Georgia's biggest win as far as records go on the year. So that was a big one for Georgia here. This one, Ole Miss is rated 10. By the way, Georgia is 11-point favorite in this one at home. So Christian, make sure you bet on Ole Miss this week. Yeah. So, but this is kind of an interesting stat. I think we talked about this on the Sunday show, Christian. This is the first time these two have met since 2016. That was Kirby Smart's first year. They don't play each other too often for 2 teams in the SEC. Another awesome note for Georgia: they get this win. They're winning the Eastern Division and they clinch. So they need this game to clinch to find themselves in Atlanta for the SEC title game. Guys, I could give you all the stats on Georgia offensively, defensively. We've been talking about them enough this year. But the thing is, man, they're average almost 40 points a game. That's awesome for Georgia. I think their offense is actually better this year than it has been in years past, especially at the quarterback position. But they're only giving up, again, 15.4 points a game defensively. So the keys for me on Georgia to win this football game, Christian, they got to get the Rebels to third down. And this is an interesting stat I was reading about this week. Ole Miss is only converting 36% of their third downs this year. Georgia is converting 55%. That's a huge discrepancy. Says a lot about the offenses. UGA ranks 3rd in the country also in the country on 3rd Jesus, I'm going to murder this right here. UGA ranks 3rd in the country with that stat, with the 55 a game. They also hold teams to only 26.6 conversion rate on third down. Now, I know I just murdered that whole segment there, but what I'm basically getting into is if they get into 3rd and long, and we talk about it a lot, a la Nebraska, teams that really struggle on third down and can't move the ball, Georgia's got such a huge discrepancy leaning their way in this game. And I think this game is going to come down. Basically, it's going to come down. It's trenches, right? Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, we talk about him. You're going to let me know about him, the run game. Georgia's been pretty good on defense. I think they're a little bit slept on this year because they're not the 21 defense. They're not the 2002's defense or 22's defense of last year. But I just don't see in this game, Christian, how this game is going to be close. I'm not going to give my prediction yet. I'm going to kick it back to you here, though. But I found that it's just a very interesting stat that a team is almost 30% better on third down than another one. It's crazy to me with these teams also being rated in the top 10.
Yeah, Chris, I agree with you. Here's ultimately where I think, we're looking at this Ole Miss Georgia preview here. Ole Miss right now coming to this game, it's number 2 versus number 9 in the country. It's a top 10 matchup. Will be Georgia's toughest opponent yet. I don't have a doubt in my mind about that. Chris, ultimately, you touched on it. Jackson Dart, he's put up very similar numbers on 50 less pass attempts than Carson Beck has, right? Wow. Pretty much, I think he's like almost 200, 300 yards off, but same amount of touchdowns, same amount of interceptions. Quinshon Judkins, right? This is the difference here, right? He's got 700, almost 800 yards there, 12 touchdowns. You look at Dijon Edwards there, who's got 633 yards and 8 touchdowns. Two very similar, I think, offenses here, right? And what they're going to do. It's going to be a high-flying affair for both these teams. The question to me is going to be Ole Miss's defense, right? That's where the real question goes. Pete Golding, obviously the old Alabama defensive coordinator, coming over to Ole Miss saying, hey, obviously there was high expectations for them. They've been in some shootout games this year that honestly, I think the defense might have even regressed in a lot of ways. Now, I think they're going to be good long term, but in this game on the road in Athens, how favorable is that going to be? We know last week against a Texas A&M offense, that has been very up and very down. They still gave up 35 points, and it was and A&M had a shot to win that there, right? They were a field goal away, as you were saying, from going into overtime and potentially stealing a game there from Ole Miss.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. That was a hell of a football game last week with that one. But yeah, Christian, what's your prediction here, man? I want to hear your thoughts here. I think, are you going upset on me this week?
I don't think I can. I can't do it. Give me Georgia 45, Ole Miss 38. I think it's going to be a close game.
Holy shit, you almost got a shootout. I would say a shootout there. I'll give you mine quick. Like I said, I kind of murdered my my paragraph there over Georgia in the third downs. But no, I think this game is a little low scoring. Give me Ole Miss 17, Georgia 38. I think Georgia's defense is too much. I think they'll step up in this one.
Yeah, that's pretty good there. It's a good time to mention what happened to my hairline. Well, it's a good question there, right? Some of the greatest men in the world, have receding hairlines. I think it's natural, right? My God,
don't worry.
I don't not wearing my hat. It came right from work. I had to jump right on the cast though, right? Priorities. That's the better thing.
I love it, Christian. That's what I'm talking about. Dressed up all dapper, as they say. Spry.
Spry, dude. Hey, I'm not scared. I got a pink tie on right now, purple shirt, man. I'm out here looking like Barney the dinosaur meets Easter here, dude. You know what I mean?
I know. That's what I told Christian before the show. I'm like, man, I don't know if I haven't seen you without your hat on in a long time. I don't know if you've ever done a show without it. So
I don't like it. I don't like it, man. You know what I mean? But by God, just know there's an upcoming game coming up, and my hair might look a little different. I might get some frosted tips if Nebraska beats Iowa. I got that on bet there. So
let's go.
All right. So let's jump into this here. All right, Chris, looking at a little Michigan versus Penn State. Chris, I'll start us off here with Michigan. So obviously right now, if you Google Michigan football, it's probably going to be about nothing to do with this game and everything to do with the alleged sign-stealing scandal that's going on. That's not what we're here for. That's being talked about to death. We're going to talk about this matchup, right?
Let's go.
And the question that I'll have you answer here in a minute for me is, does that bleed in? right? Chris, we touched on this to start it off here, and that's Michigan. Ever since this thing has come out, I think they've played better. Honestly,
agreed.
They haven't let the distractions kind of get with them and rattle them. They've played better. Now, this is by far Penn State's going to be the best team they played to date, without a question in my mind. Right? McCarthy's looked good. I mean, 3 interceptions to 18 touchdowns. Blake Corum still running the rock pretty good. Blake Corum has 16 touchdowns on the year, dude.
It's what Blake Corum does, man, in that run game, bro. Doesn't surprise me one bit.
I mean, they at times they're not really sexy in offense. They're kind of just a grind you out, pound you out kind of team, and they use that run to set up the pass. And sometimes they can do vice versa if it's not working. They do a really good job at that. Defensively, we know they're good on defense, right? That's the bread and butter that Harbaugh really wants to do. My question is, Penn State has a good defense too. Penn State has this, really good quarterback on the other side of it that Chris is going to tell us about. With this being the best team, the most real team all offseason, all we heard about was Penn State. They're ready to take the leap this year. They're ready to take the Big Ten by storm. Is this the game where we see chaos start to ensue here, Chris?
Yeah, and you're right, and that's what I'm going to segue right into here. Penn State, man, I feel like it's like this every year, right? I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I would agree with you. This is probably the best team James Franklin's had. I would say that from top to bottom. He finally got a quarterback in there, and Drew Aller. They're 8-1 on the year. Christian, 3rd in the Big Ten. The only loss was to Ohio State a few weeks ago. I think that score was 20-12. Penn State probably played their best game of the year last week against a Maryland team. Put up like 51 points. Just completely dismantled Maryland. Maryland obviously not as good as what we thought they were going to be this year, but still, Penn State's offense looked really good. Drew Aller played amazing. But you're right. Do or die time for Penn State this week. This is it. I mean, your season's over for a playoff berth if you don't get this one. So, James Franklin, Christian, he needs a win. It needs to come this year. It's got to. I've said that so many fucking times on this podcast over the summer leading up to this game. Here's a stat that just kills me, though. He's 3-16 against top 10 teams. Not a good record, man. It's not. And we know what Michigan is. You alluded to it earlier. Drew Aller's got to play elite in this one, Christian. He's going to have to play like he did last week, but against a much, much better Michigan defense, as you said earlier. The run game with Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, man, it's been good this year. It's been solid. They both got over combined, I think, 1,000 yards. They got like 11 or 12 TDs on the ground. You know what Penn State's going to do. They're a very similar version to what Michigan is, right? I kind of call them Michigan's little brother. They play a very similar style of play. At the end of the day, though, Christian, if Penn State wants to win this game, again, like I said, it's coming down to Drew Aller, man. It is. He's going to have to be able to push the ball down the field, convert third downs. I'm so big on that. That's where elite quarterbacks stand out, especially in college football. And keep Michigan's offense off the field. You know what Michigan's going to do. They're going to ground and pound you. J.J. McCarthy is a pretty good quarterback. He's learned to throw the ball. He's limited to turnovers this year. He's only gotten better from last year. On the other side of the ball, Penn State's only given up 11 points per game. The only teams better than them is Ohio State and Michigan. Here's the thing, dude. If Penn State, and I want Penn State in my heart to win this game, Christian, badly. I do. I'm not a Michigan fan. I am not an Ohio State fan. I like James Franklin. I root for the underdog most weeks. They're going to have to be able to shut down and contain Corum a little bit. You talked about 16 touchdowns on the ground this year. That is a shit ton. I expect Corum to score in this game, but you're going to have to slow him down a little bit. And I think you got to try to make JJ beat you through the air. I do. And I'm not saying JJ McCarthy can't throw the ball. He can. But he's not known for that necessarily yet. Michigan's the definition of bully ball. That's what they do. Ask Nebraska about it a couple weeks ago. I mean, they just slammed it down our throat. It's coming. Speaking of playbooks, Nebraska could have handed Michigan their playbook, and there would have been nothing we could have done about it. So I'm going to give you my prediction here, Christian. Again, as much as I want Penn State to win this one, I believe Michigan, cheating aside, wink, wink, has looked good. And, they're probably the more complete team overall this year. Give me Michigan 31, Penn State 17.
Yeah. Chris, I want to add one more thing into here. last year they played this game. I think Penn State gave up, 400 yards rushing to Michigan, some absurd stat like that. Interestingly enough, if you just take a quick little Google, do you know who the number one rush defense in the country is?
Right now?
Yeah. It's Penn State.
Wow. Okay.
Penn State is the best at stopping the run right now in the country from a statistical standpoint. Okay. And they played some good teams. So I think that's going to show in this game. Give me the upset on it. Franklin needs a statement victory at Penn State, I think, to keep him off the hot seat. As crazy as that is. Give me Penn State 31, Michigan 28.
Wow. Love it, man. I love the fact that you're taking this, man. I thought about this all week, and I was like, man, I really, really, really want Penn State to win this game. But you know how it is, right? You got to set that aside, overall. And I just can't find enough to if I had to bet, I got to bet Michigan. And I hope you're right, though, man. I want Penn State to win this football game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I just think I've seen Penn State play, and offensively they scare me at times because they get a little bit stale, and that's down to Drew Aller. You're right, though. If he can play like he's played the past couple of weeks and push the ball down the field, like I said, they're going to be in this one, man. In this game, I want James Franklin to win this game so badly, dude. Just to shut up Michigan, and Penn State can get their big moment in the sun, if you will.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is, like you said, it's kind of Aller and this team have been, he's really young. And that game against Ohio State was on the road. For young quarterbacks, sometimes going on the road kind of changes the complexity of a game. And I personally think, hey, you know what I mean? What's he got to lose? I mean, we've already seen him play one of the best teams in the country in Ohio State, who, frankly, depending on how you look at it, you can make the argument Ohio State has a better defense than Michigan this year.
Yeah, that's crazy
to
say, but yeah.
It's a home game for the kid. There's a lot to like about this. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. That is for damn sure.
I agree.
All right, looking ahead here, we got Utah and Washington on tap. Two teams that are kind of battling it out here, right? I mean, Utah is still alive in this thing, and Washington right now is undefeated, Chris. Talk to me a little bit about the Huskies.
Yeah, and I'll make this one quick. I know I rattled on there with the previous segment, but we know what Washington is, man. 9-0, the big win over USC last week, I think in a shootout, in my opinion. Not a lot of defense was played until the fourth quarter, until Washington got a hold of themselves and pulled that game out. This game to me is a clash of way different styles, in my opinion. You got Washington, who hangs their hat, on offense, puts up tons of numbers with Penix and those wide receivers. And you got Utah, who's just every year under Kyle Whittingham is a tough defense. They play hard. They're not near as talented as most teams, but boy, they play tough over there. Just a clash of two different styles of teams here, which should be a good game. I truly believe that. But, overall, man, Washington, I want to talk about them for a second. I know we got a resident fan on the show most of the time, and Daniel, but Washington, after the win after Oregon, Christian, we've talked about this. It is almost like they haven't shown up the past couple of weeks. They put 15 points up against Arizona State, who Utah just dropped a 50 bomb on last week, which says a lot about Utah and their offense. And we've talked about that this year too. But, last week, the defense not really showing up against USC. I know it's Caleb Williams. I get all of that. But I've been really high on Washington most of the year, and I thought they probably had the best defense right up there with Utah in the Pac-12. I'm not sure what's going on in Washington. Something is not clicking. Something doesn't look right, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying, jump off the ship and Washington's no good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they got to get it together this week, because if you don't come correct against Utah, Utah's going to win this game. And then the Pac-12 is going to have a shit show as far as a bunch of 1- and 2-loss teams battling it out. And, hey, I know me and you talked about it. We want to see the Washington-Oregon matchup, Christian, but give me your thoughts on Utah right here and what you think.
Yeah, man, I think, first of all, Utah, this is a team with Whittingham over there that is built on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they struggled at certain points this year trying to figure out who was going to step up and replace Cam Rising, a guy that we thought up until a couple weeks ago, every week he was week to week. And then it turns out he's season to season at this point. But Bryson Barnes, I think, has settled in. He's become their guy. He's not sexy. He's not going to probably finish the year with 20 touchdowns. right? But the guy's a winner. I mean, he can do what he needs to do, and this team is winning. They are a team that is, if you want to think about it, they're a no-name team that gets results, Chris. They're just a good football team that plays, smash mouth defense football, and they run the ball, and they're very effective at what they do, and they just spread the ball around. And that's phenomenal. They've got two quarterbacks they can lean on. They've got a million different athletes they can throw back there at running back that look fantastic. I mean, the passing game's not necessarily all that great, but hey, look, like you said, Chris, they put up 55 points. They beat them 55-3 after taking that 35-6 L at Oregon. Right? The Oregon loss, say what you want to. I think Oregon's maybe one of the more complete teams in the country. The question, and you touched on it, Chris, the biggest question mark to me is going to be Washington's defense. If Washington's defense doesn't come correct in this game, they're going to let Utah stay in it. And if you let Utah stay in a game with you late, bad things happen. Right? It's a 2:30 game our time, right? That's what is that? West Coast time. That's like an early game for them, right?
It's like 12:30 over there. Super early.
So weird things always happen in the Pac-12, early and late. Most conferences, it always happens early and late. So we'll end up seeing, right? With that being said, Barnes has got to come out. He's got to play good. He doesn't have to out-duel Penix here necessarily, right? He just has to play within himself, lead the team down the field, and they got to be able. They can't win this game taking field goals. They're going to have to win it by scoring. And you got to get a stop also on Penix. Chris, I'll go ahead and give you my predictions. I got Utah in an upset here, 28, Washington 24.
Woo! Wow, he's on the upsides tonight, guys. I'm close with you. I believe this game will either be super tight or a Washington blowout, kind of similar to what happened to Utah against Oregon a few weeks ago, but I think it's going to be tight overall. I lean that way. Give me Utah 20, Washington 27. Damn it. Man, that was a bold take. I love it. Christian, his bold takes are always good. They seem to hit most of the time. So I will say this, though. I want to say this real quickly about Utah. You know what Utah reminds me is of a pro team, and they're not that way anymore. And I don't want to say the Super Bowl, so take the Super Bowls out of it. Utah reminds me a lot of the Patriots. They're very simple. Yeah. You know what they're going to do. They're going to rely on their defense. At quarterback, it's like Tom Brady. He's not going to throw for 500 yards a game and 6 touchdowns, but they're going to ground and pound. They're not going to beat themselves. That's one thing I love about Utah and Kyle Whittingham and what he's done over there for all these years. He's made this team that before he got there was really nobody. Urban Meyer had a couple good years with Alex Smith there, but he's created this thing where they're not going to beat themselves. They're going to be in most games, and their talent level compared to like Washington's not even close. If you look at just, the amount of stars and the recruiting, but he gets the most out of his guys. That's why I love Utah. I hope you're right. I hope Utah, Utah's my favorite Pac-12 team. They have been forever. And I'll be honest and say that, Christian, but I think this game, I'm with you. I could see Utah winning this one the way Washington's looked the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, Washington has been one of those teams, I feel like over the last month, ever since the Oregon game, they've lost confidence, dare I say, which is weird because you think you would go the other way. Right. And it seems like Oregon has kind of gained confidence. And I think sometimes that's the best thing to happen to you. Getting a loss can sometimes kind of jolt you back into it, take some of the pressure off of you, and let you just kind of play within yourself. I feel the same way, about Washington as you do. I think they've been begging to be beat over the last month, and somebody's got to do it. Or Washington just needs one of those games where they wake up and realize, hey, we're Washington, and they keep playing defense and everything like that. I ultimately think what it is I think the defense was a little suspect. They didn't really play any like lights out offenses to start the year off. And as the season goes on, we're starting to see that more. They're still winning these games. They're winning shootout style games or these games that are kind of really, really close. And Penix is getting cold and he's sick and this and that. But they're doing what they need to do and they're winning. And I think that's ultimately what you have to do. Now, what is that going to translate to, in a potential rematch with Oregon or even in the college football playoff or a high stakes bowl game? I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, I'm with you on that. Washington has looked, I have a few questions now about them the past couple of weeks. I didn't before. There was a point, I think this season, a lot of people have said they looked like the best team in the country. But you know how a long season is, Christian, especially college football. There's ups and there's downs. I mean, we've said the same thing about Georgia some weeks, man. They look like a top 10 team. Sometimes they look like they might not belong in the top 25 for our first half, a la Auburn or something, right? But they have won. They are 9-0, and I want that rematch, dude. I truly do. That was a good football game. I hope it happens, but hats off to the Utah Utes this year, getting it done with a pig farmer at quarterback. That's what he was. So that's the joke down there in Utah. That's actually what he was doing before he went to college. So I think it's a cool story with Bryson Barnes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I heard he was a stock shelves too, man. So you got Kurt Warner, you got the pig farmer. I mean, whatever narrative you want to roll with, you just roll with it out there.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
Well, let's jump in here. All right, our last game here that we're going to cover for this preview show: Tennessee versus Mizzou. Chris, I'll start us off here with the Tennessee Mizzou take. I mean, this is basically the battle for second place, right, in the
Absolutely.
SEC East.
Yep.
Which is a big time bowl game, right? I know everybody doesn't want to get all high and mighty on bowl games anymore, but I think in this world, hey, you got to have something, right? The difference between being 7-4 and being 8-5 is, or 9-5, whatever have you, is drastic, right? It's drastic, I think, in recruiting and everything you're trying to build into a program here. Looking at I'll take the volunteer side of everything here. Joe Milton's looked all right. He's looked all right. He's had some real streaky games. I think the offense, you can tell they really miss Hendon Hooker, right? They've got that real young quarterback over there. I'm Olivia. I think it's his name basically.
Yep.
I probably mispronounced it, but he's going to probably get, as the season goes on, they're going to start getting him ready for next year, and Tennessee will probably be really, really dynamic with him at there. But Tennessee's offense, I mean, they still got a guy in Squirrel White, who looks all right. He's got 556 yards, a couple touchdowns. Got Brew McCoy. They got some of these guys that can be really good on that side of it. The biggest question, and we touch on it all the time, Chris, Tennessee on defense, right? Tennessee on defense has been suspect a lot of the times here. They've played better this year. I will say that. They have played better this year than they have in years past. But is it at that level where they're going to overtake a Georgia? Is it at that level where they're going to, come into this game against the number 14 team in the country and be able to put that and get that win, right? We saw it work against Texas A&M. That's fine, right? Texas A&M on the road at Neyland Stadium, one of the toughest places in the country to play outside of the Swamp and outside of some other venues there. With a backup quarterback, they did what they were supposed to do. I want to see, can they shut down a Missouri Tigers team that with Brady Cook and some of these weapons you're going to talk about, Chris, can they do that? Can they get me some stops? If they can do that, I think they're going to be just fine. If they get in a shootout game with Mizzou, it's a different story here.
Yeah, and you're not wrong here. And, we know what Missouri's been this year. They're America's sweetheart team, really. Nobody really expected them to be 7-2. They're second, as you said, in the SEC East, currently fighting for that spot in this game. They've had the losses to LSU and Georgia, by 9 points last week. But, hats off. I don't think enough people have given enough credit to Missouri last week. They hung around with Georgia, man. They did. And I know I don't believe in moral victories, but they played Georgia pretty tough for most of that game. They really did. Even defensively, they actually held Georgia to a lot less points than I thought was going to happen. So, but offensively, I think Missouri will be able to move the ball on this one on Tennessee's defense. I'm not 100% sold on their defense this year. They've looked good at times, as you said, but Mizzou's averaging over 32 points a game, and that's been against some pretty good defense. They did put up 21 against Georgia last week. That's not terrible. Not everybody can say that against a Kirby Smart defense. Brady Cook has been a big surprise to me this year. He's almost top 20, top 15 in every passing court category. Something I didn't see happen. He's been very consistent for most of the year. And you guys know I talk about him. Luther Burden, man. I love that kid. I think he's one of the best receivers in the country. He was a 5-star recruit out of Missouri, stayed home. That's why he's playing there. Is he healthy for this game, though? If he's not, I'd be probably leaning Tennessee if I had to then. But he's such a weapon on the outside. He only, Georgia shut him down after the first quarter. He had that big touchdown to start the game, but that's Georgia we're talking about here. We're talking about Tennessee's defense. Definitely not on that level, but they need him to be big in this one. Defensively, like I said, Missouri needs to win the turnover battle, Christian. Joe Milton has gotten better. We harp on him once in a while, but he needs to be good in this game. I'm going to give you my prediction right now, Christian. This game is a pick'em right now, currently. Like these two teams are so even. It's currently a pick'em online in any betting website that you look at basically right now currently. I have Tennessee 27, Christian, Missouri 31. I'm leaning Mizzou in this one strictly because they're at home.
Very astute there, Chris. I've got Tennessee 28, Missouri 31.
Oh. Holy shit. That's awesome. Holy cow. 1 point off on the one team. That's it. Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I think, like you said, I'm looking at it. This is, you said it best, Chris. This is a pick 'em game as far as I'm concerned, right? I can see either scenario happening. Sometimes you try to look back, and they played a lot of similar teams. Like, Tennessee beat Kentucky 33-27. That was on the road. And then Mizzou played Kentucky a few weeks back, and they beat them 38-21. I think the pure fact this game is at Missouri, that's going to kind of take away the Tennessee edge a little bit more. I feel like Tennessee looks good on the road, but they look better at home.
Way better at home. Agree.
And, as far as Missouri's concerned, they're just winning, whether it's on the road, at home, whatever have you. I mean, the game against Georgia probably would have been a hell of a lot closer than what it was if it was at Missouri, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I think it probably would have. You bring up a good point. I didn't bring that up in this segment, but yeah, Tennessee is a lot, to me, a much different team at home. They're tough to beat there at Neyland Stadium. I mean, we're going to find out when they play Georgia here in a couple weeks or next week or whatever they got to go there. But I'm with you. Yeah, I lean Missouri simply because it's at home. Missouri has played really well at home for the most part this year. They do put up a lot more points at home, which I think the same could be said about most teams. I mean, you get the home crowd behind you. It's college football. It's kind of what it's about. So I agree.
Chris, looking at some other games here, just kind of around the way for this weekend. We've got Michigan State and Ohio State taking on each other. Games at Ohio State, probably not. Right?
Not a chance in hell for Michigan State in that one. They got their big win. They got their win for the year in the Big Ten.
They did. Yeah. They did.
Yeah, they knocked off the Skurs.
I think Miami, Florida State. I mean, Florida State should win that when it's at home for them.
What is Miami, Christian? They put up 6 points against NC State last week on the road.
They're a team looking to throw the ACC into chaos, is what I think they are, Chris.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me if this was a close game, right? Cristobal has got to be on the hot seat a little bit, right? I mean, Miami fans are
100% agree.
Pretty patient people, I think, at times. But man, a couple years down the road, if you're not winning and it gets worse and worse, and you lose some of the games the way they're losing them, they're going to lose some of that patience. No better way than to beat your rival, Florida State, right? To kind of get off that hot seat a little bit here, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Florida State's going to roll them. Looking at this game here, it's a 9:30 game, USC versus Oregon. I personally think Oregon's going to shut them down on the offensive side or on the defensive side of the ball. And then I think, we touched on it, Chris, Oregon's one of the most complete teams in the country. We've seen what USC is, and they're very one-dimensional. Dan Lanning's building this Oregon team like an SEC caliber school. And we see how Lincoln Riley looks against those kind of teams every year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I want to add to this one a little bit. I don't think this game's particularly close. This one surprised me if Oregon goes out here and wins by fucking 20 or more. I think Oregon might be the best team in the country right now. Now, I know people are going to comment and grab your keyboard and type away, but I know Oregon has one loss. But since that loss, they've been on fire. I would put them up against the Georgias of the world right now. I'd put them against the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans, man. I truly think Oregon, after you mentioned it earlier in the segment, that Oregon after that loss, and there was some mistakes by Oregon in that game. I actually thought Oregon was probably the better team. Man, they've come out on fire, destroying people, both sides of the ball. You said something very, very important there, Christian. Complete. Bucky Irving, dude, one of the best unknown talked about backs in the country. Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns last week. I mean, these guys just keep putting up crazy-ass numbers over there offensively. Nobody's really been able to shut them down at all. And we know Southern Cal, they fired Alex Grinch this week. They don't have a defense. They didn't have one. Lincoln Riley's never had a defense. You don't believe in defense over there. I see Oregon putting up 50 easy if they wanted to. And I think their defense is really, really good too. You said a really important word there. He's building that team like an SEC type of team.
Yeah, I agree. And the other side of that too, I feel like in college football, maybe I'm wrong. I kind of don't feel like I am. But like if you've got one side of the ball that looks terrible, right? And it's not for lack of talent with USC. I think it's more of they need an offseason with a different coordinator that knows how to coach defense, and they need to get some of these guys reps, and they need to be able to do that, right? I don't think you're fixing this in the middle of the season by firing Alex Grinch. Now, I agree with the firing, right? I'm not sitting here saying that they shouldn't have done it, but I'm just saying if you're expecting, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to hold Oregon to like 20 points, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think it matters who you bring in as a defensive coordinator for USC. I think it's a psychological thing with Lincoln Riley. You know, something I notice about these high octane offenses that do this constantly, and Caleb Williams is elite. Lincoln Riley's had great quarterbacks and great offensive systems. Those teams never win championships. You know why? Part of it's because you're putting your defense in a bad spot every game because they're right back on the field. They got to find a way. He's got to find a way to control the ball a little bit more. It's great that you put up the numbers that you do, but he needs to get serious about what he really wants to do as a college football coach. Because in my opinion, as high as everybody is on his list of talking about him all the time as one of the best coaches in college football, what really has he done? And I'm including the Oklahoma days, Christian. When the offenses look as elite as they do under him, anytime they play anybody with any sort of defense in a good offense, a la Georgia, a la LSU back in the Joe Burrow, all those times, he gets just blown out of the water. And it's becoming a reoccurring theme there. And I think something needs to happen with him mentally and be like, look, I got to get serious about this thing. Because it's not like they don't have talent, Christian, on the defensive side of the ball. They do. Yeah. They just don't play defense. It's like they're not interested in it.
I think, and I agree with you 100%. Something needs to happen. And you touched on the psychology, and it's a Lincoln Riley thing. And I think ultimately here's the problem, right? Sometimes, like Penn State, for example, I think Penn State is a great example of this. And it's not that they do anything necessarily bad. They just haven't been, they just don't beat Ohio State, and they haven't really, of recent history, been able to beat Michigan. Right? And I say recent, I'm not talking about like in the last 20 years. I mean recent as in the last 3 years. They've just struggled at beating those two teams, and they've fallen down the ladder a little bit. Now, with Harbaugh potentially leaving and everything like that, they've got a much better shot going forward. But still, you're adding in all these other teams. My whole point of it is the worst place I think you can be is a 10 or 11 win coach every year, right?
Yeah, I agree. Can I add to that, Christian? Like, you know this as a Georgia fan. I know this as a Nebraska fan with the Bo Pelini era. It's a bad place. You bring up a good topic here, and I want to add to this. This is real quick. It sucks because most people will be like, half the fan base would say, well, my team never wins 6-7 games. It'd be great to win 9 or 10, a la Nebraska right now. But then if you're like a team under the Mark Richt eras under Georgia, it's never enough. Under Penn State's era, under James Franklin. Now I want more. I want more. That's a really good point. I wanted just to throw that out there because it's such a split deal on that. It's never enough, but it's not enough. It's a no-win situation.
Well, it's like you said too, right? Like if you've got a team like Nebraska, right? And I already know this is going to happen. You start winning 9-10 games a year. You get to that point. You fought to get to that point. How long until that's not enough? You know what I mean? That becomes the new standard. You look back at your history, and 9-10 wins now isn't good enough. But if you go back to like last year, or even this year, if you win 9 or 10 games, I mean, Matt Rule becomes the governor of the state.
Right.
But you look forward maybe 4 or 5 years. Let's say you still with the program. Let's say they get out of those dark times. They get some good recruiting classes in. Harburg is the guy, and he progresses, right, a little bit more in a couple years. And they get to that 9-10 win season, right? And they do that back to back. That's not enough because now we need to be in the top 12. We need to be going for the playoffs. We need to be beating Michigan, and we need to be beating Ohio State. We need to be beating Oregon or UCLA. We need to be beating those teams, right? And it's a great part of football, right? It's addicting. Winning is addicting. We touched on it with Dabo, right? Dabo is getting criticized, or was getting criticized realistically, probably still will be because he's probably going to lose another game or two this year because of what he's built Clemson into. When Dabo took over that program, if he had 4 losses, nobody would have given a shit. You know what I mean? That was okay. At least we're not losing all of them. But now you see where it's at, and I just think, college football is kind of a parody in that way, right? Where unless you're winning the championship every year, every couple years, it's not enough. It's never enough.
No, that's a good point, man. We'll move on here. I like that though. It's a very good point. Good topic.
This is a game. There's two games here I really want to kind of dig into for a little bit too, Chris. Alabama, Kentucky. We got people in the chat saying, "Hey, Kentucky can beat Bama."
I see where you guys know my love for Kentucky. I love what Stoops has done over there. He's the mini Georgia, right? He's built the same way he wants to be Georgia. Smash mouth defense, run the ball down your throat when you need to, right? Unfortunately, Kentucky's coming off a couple losses in a row now after getting beat and dismantled by Georgia. I think this game is kind of close. I think it's very conflicting because Bama's a team we don't talk about a ton anymore because we thought they were done after Texas. Bama's looked better week in and week out for the most part. They look like a team that's going to play Georgia in the SEC title game. That's what I truly believe is going to happen because that's the only team that's the last time you guys lost. You guys have such a history with those guys. And I know how it is, man. I'm not an SEC guy. I know you are, but I know enough. And I think this game is kind of close. Bama's a different team on the road than they are at home, Christian.
Yeah. USF has proven that.
I mean, throw it in there. Resident Georgia Bulldog fan. I love it.
Getting cocky, dude. You know what I mean? You get you a couple of those right there. You know what I mean? A little back-to-back action, and you gotta get a little cocky on them. No, but in all seriousness, though, I can see. You know, I think sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Here's the thing, though, dude. I've been doing this all off season all year with Bama, where I got it right with Texas, and I think ultimately, here's what I think, Chris. I think ultimately we were right that Bama is not as complete of a team as what they are. But I think we were also, where we were wrong or short-sighted at, was the other teams around them. Now, I'm not trying to be an excuse guy, but Tennessee hasn't looked good the way we thought they would look. Joe Milton and them haven't picked up where they left off. I don't think they made it nowhere near the jump they should have made on defense. Right, like they got up on Bama and let them come back. Right, who was it? LSU. LSU gave up 4 rushing touchdowns to Alabama on a defense that, and I've said it all year long, that honestly should have been a lot better than that. They were better last year than they were this year on defense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's been a weird year for the SEC. Kind of, we've seen Missouri come out of nowhere. Ole Miss, I don't know if a lot of people predicted Ole Miss to be where they're at right now either. They've won a few games. They beat LSU. LSU's a team that I know you were ultra high on this year. I know I was relatively high on them. You should have been. Anybody with half a brain would have thought so too. But yeah, it's been a different year, and Bama's taking advantage of that because I don't think Bama is great, but they're doing enough to get by every week. It might be ugly. It might not be the typical Nick Saban Alabama teams you're accustomed to seeing, but they're winning. And Christian, we talked about Washington that way. Man, at the end of the day, all that matters is as long as you win. They don't have to be pretty.
Yeah, because you said it best. They're putting themselves in a position to, if they just win out, play Georgia inevitably, right, in the SEC championship game, and probably have a shot to get back in the playoffs. Now, when they get in the playoffs, do I think that's going to be, they're going to win it? No, I absolutely don't. I mean, their defense is good. Yes, I will give them that. Offensively, they do some things really well, but I think ultimately to win it, you got to be able to throw the ball. You've got to be able to throw the ball. Yep. Looking at Texas TCU, Chris, TCU season has not been what anybody would have wanted. However, in this game, first of all, as Ewers playing this week, I think they're still having to roll with Murphy, right?
I don't know. To me, don't know why they would play Ewers in this game. Texas is a better team with even Arch Manning playing quarterback, in my opinion. TCU has been so defensively just shit. I don't think it matters for Texas in this one. I think Texas has got to get it going here. They got a stranglehold, not a stranglehold, but they're at the top of the board as far as the Big 12 goes. Christian, do you see a potential upset here falling apart on the road at TCU?
Maybe. I mean, it would be the most Big 12 thing to happen.
Yeah, no shit.
It shouldn't, right? And that's the thing with the Big 12, right? Is it shouldn't happen, but just because it shouldn't doesn't mean anything. To me, I see a way where TCU wins this game. They shouldn't do it by anything that makes logical sense, but with how they played last week, anything's possible. Anything's possible. I mean, who'd they play last week? Kansas State, was it?
And K-State pissed that game down their leg. That was all K-State's fault at the end there. No, the K-State dominated the second half of that football game. Texas should have lost that football game. And I don't play what it could have, should have. Anybody that watched that knows what I'm talking about.
And this game's on the road for them too. It's a 6:30 game. The other side of it, and I think this is a major part of it, is TCU's a more talented team than K-State is.
Talent-wise, I would say they're right there, if not better. Yes, absolutely. So TCU hasn't held true this year.
They haven't. They have not. Stanford and Oregon State. We're gonna roll with the Cardinals.
I mean, they've been on fire lately, man. Playing in games they shouldn't be, having no business, beating teams they shouldn't be beating. No, Oregon State's got 2 losses. They're the number 12 team in the country. Do I think they're better than Missouri? I don't know. Oregon State's a tough team to rank strictly, but they only have 2 losses. Not a lot of teams walking around out there in college football that have 2 losses. They're at Corvallis. I find it really hard for anybody to beat them there. I think they're looking at a date here in a couple of weeks against Oregon.
Yeah. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. Give me Oregon State all the way.
All right.
Looking here, Oklahoma State, UCF. I think Oklahoma State's going to do what they need to do in this one and win.
I am going to throw in real quick, Christian. I think this game comes down to a field goal.
Oh, really?
Let down spot. Oklahoma State coming off the big win last week against Oklahoma. I'm telling you, man, going on the road, time zone. I'm putting some money on Central Florida this week.
Okay. I like it. All right.
I got
Chaos Pandemonium. You going with Texas Tech or Kansas?
I think this game's close. I think I know Texas Tech's got like 2 or 3 fucking wins, and they have pissed me off this year because I thought they were going to win 9 at least. I think Tech keeps this close. I know I said this last week with Iowa State and Kansas, and I look like a fool betting wise. I think Tech hangs around in this game for a little while. Kansas, by the way, I think is 3rd in the Big 12. They're 6-2, something like that.
Yeah, it'll. I don't know. I think Kansas. I like Kansas in it, not just because they're rated, but games at Kansas too. It's 11 o'clock kickoff. Okay. Texas Tech, to me, they flourish at home night games.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. You and your times of the day you play, you're like one of those guys.
Yeah. I think when you're betting and stuff, you got to take everything into account, right? The weather, the wind. You go out in your front yard, you kind of throw the grass up, you see where it's going. You put a video of you kicking a 25-yard field goal. Tell everybody you're kicking a 60-yard field goal. Whatever you do.
No. And then I try to kick a 60-yard field goal and say it's 25. Yeah, that's what I do.
Oh man! Well, here's a couple more good games for us here, Chris. West Virginia, Oklahoma. I honestly think this is a pick'em game. Shouldn't be, but I think it's a pick'em game.
West Virginia, much better team than most people thought this year as far as wins losses go. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma has to get right here. They've just shit the bed the last 2 weeks after the big win after Texas with both losses to Kansas and Oklahoma State. It's at home at Oklahoma. They got to win this game. But I'm with you. West Virginia is very slept on. I think West Virginia is 4th in the Big 12, something like that crazily. I'm with you, though. This game, I think, will be very close.
Oh, 100%. I agree. I think it'll be a close game. Oklahoma should win it. West Virginia's playing for Neil Brown and his job on the line. Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, I think confidence, big thing there. Oklahoma looks like they've lost it in the last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah. They don't look good.
So, Florida, LSU. Jaden Daniels' status is still up in the air for that game. Nussmeier, I think is his name, the backup. Very capable young man. Saw him a little bit last year in the SEC championship game. I mean, they honestly looked a little better with him in there.
Well, if you don't remember, the offseason was 60% of the fan base at LSU wanted him to start over Daniels. They got their wish last week because he got to play. He's a capable quarterback. LSU rolls in this one to me. I don't think there's any way Florida can score enough points.
Yeah, I think here's the thing, Chris. I think that loss last week to Arkansas, the way they lost, I think that's a confidence crusher, especially on the road here. But if they can somehow figure out a way to, again, LSU's defense has not been very good. And
it's atrocious.
It is. So if there's, that's their path here. If you're Florida, is come in, hopefully get healthy. You know what I mean? Take advantage of maybe a younger guy starting here and figure out a way to win on the road. Right,
Yeah.
Florida's path to their season still on their is still right there. I think it's funny because last week everybody was fire Napier. If he comes in and wins this game against the number 19 team in the country, they'll keep him.
And 100%. He's got to win this one, right, Christian? He's got to win one of the next three.
He's got to win one out of the next three. If he doesn't win one of the next three games, I think he's done. Dude, I really think he's done. I know that fan base. I know they are not patient, and nor should they be. If you're Florida or Auburn, right? 2 years. My thing is 2 years. That's the timeline. If you're not winning a bowl game within 2 years in the SEC, big time football, I think it's really tough. I think it's really tough to hang on to a coach. Not personally, right? Because I think, hey, you keep a coach 3-4 years, I think it's all right.
Right.
That third year is where you gauge them. But it's big time college football, right? It's big time money being thrown around out there in the offseason. There's so many other coaches' names that gets kind of thrown around. I don't see it if he doesn't win out, or not win out, but at least win one of these games.
I'm with you, sort of. I don't think they'll fire him if he doesn't win another game. I think they keep him because I think Florida is so sold on this recruiting class coming in and whether he can keep them or not. But do I agree? I don't think Billy Napier should have been a head coach to begin with, personally. And that's not, like I said, I'm not talking about who he is as a person. He's not Dan Mullen or some clown on the sideline. I think it was too much for him. But at the end of the day, Florida has to win one, though. I mean, because, he's going to have 3 losing seasons in a row. Because if they lose this year, you guys looked at the schedule next year for Florida. They're not winning 6 games. I'm telling you that right now. We're not doing a preview for 2024 right now, but they're not. That schedule is so bad and brutal for Florida next year. They got to get kids in there. He needs 3 or 4 recruiting classes like this year, if this year's class comes, to be able to fight in the SEC, because the SEC is only getting tougher with Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There's a lot of teams that have had down years, and we talked about it a little bit, that they'll probably be on the upswing a little bit here. Arizona, Colorado, put a fork in them. I got Arizona. There's a lot of here's the thing, right? A lot of talk was being said all off season in the start of and in like the first 3 or 4 games of the season, right? For Colorado.
Yeah.
And then reality hit, and when you're winning, talk as much as you want. When you start losing, that's when things get very compounded, and you're seeing that a lot right now, right? It just, I mean, Deion's coming out saying, "Hey, guys are quitting." He's talking about something else. I was thinking of something else, but you know what I mean. It's one of those things where Deion is great. It's a double-edged sword. He's a very polarizing guy. Arizona has looked like a really good team out of nowhere.
Yeah. I got Arizona, and I know it's at Colorado. I think this game will be close for a half, but Arizona has just been one of those teams. They've beaten 3 ranked teams in a row out of nowhere. A team that's got a decent offense. They got a Pac-12 style of offense. Their defense has been playing pretty good. Yeah, they're going to roll here. My thoughts on Deion, man, I don't think Colorado still makes a bowl game. I know people laughed me off the internet 4 or 5 weeks ago. I still don't think they do. And I don't know if Deion Sanders is really a head coach. The more and more I watch this, the more and more I realize it looks like he's trying to get his son into the goddamn NFL. I don't know. He fired his offensive coordinator, which wasn't even the problem of Colorado's, the least of their problems as a team. I don't know what's going on over there. Colorado looks like a team that is probably going to win maybe one more game this year. And they got a lot of questions in the offseason. There's a lot of things I've heard about. He doesn't want, I don't buy into much what I read on the internet, but there's just a lot of, it's just everywhere you look, there's this, there's that, there's this about Colorado. They're not winning this football game. I mean, Arizona looks like a team on a mission and nobody's talking about them. I mean, and like I said, hats off to the Wildcats this year. I did not expect this out of them. I lost some money earlier in the year on them when they just destroyed Washington State by like 40. Give me Arizona though, Christian, in this game by a landslide.
Yeah. I think we touched on it. We'll touch on it more, I'm sure. But Colorado going to the Big 12 next year, probably going to be one of the best things for them, especially with Texas, Oklahoma jumping ship. So they got a real shot there to kind of compete and kind of run that conference, I think, for a little bit there, especially with year 2 Deion, some of these guys. Shedeur Sanders probably will come back. We'll see, and we'll kind of go from there. Rutgers and Iowa. This, to me, Rutgers is probably going to be, I know on paper, hey, Iowa's number 22 in the country. They've got a couple losses this year. Those couple losses being one to Penn State and the other one to Minnesota. Iowa's offense has looked terrible. Defense, special teams, ironically, have had to keep him just about every game.
If I told you right now this game is a pick 'em, would you believe me?
No.
It is a Rutgers is the favorite by a point right now.
I agree with that. I agree with Rutgers. I think Rutgers, I don't particularly think this game's going to be close because I think Iowa's just had the benefit of playing some really bad teams.
Yeah. Okay.
On both sides of the ball. I mean, and their defense is really good, but they're not like Iowa's defense. And let me just throw this out here at you, Chris. Is Iowa's defense good enough to hold USC to 14 points?
I don't think they could probably hold only because it's not their defense. It's that their offense is going to go 3 and out right away and put their defense right back on the field. So it's a nutrition thing. Like I'm God, that's a crazy statement, but I'd almost believe that, Christian.
You'd believe that they'd hold them to 14 points?
I think Iowa's defense is good enough to hold a lot of teams to 3 touchdowns, like elite offenses. I think they're good enough to probably do that. But here's the thing: you're never going to know that because their offense is so bad. You got a guy back there that looks like you in a body double that's going 6 of 15 for 36 yards.
I agree with you. I think that, but here's the thing, right? That's a double-edged sword. The offense is just going to give the ball right back to them, and I think the defense. Look, I think their defense is good for the Big Ten West and some of the Big Ten schools that they play. But we see it every time they play someone worth a fuck, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we saw it in the Penn State game.
Yeah, 31-0.
I mean, look at Ohio State's offense. Ohio State's defense. Ohio State only gave up, what was it, like not even 15 points to them? I mean, I just think that you look at their schedule and it kind of goes back to who have they played. I think Rutgers should and will win this game. And I like I said, I think it'll be by probably 2 or 3 scores. Because here's the thing, if you get a lead on Iowa, you get a 1 or 2 touchdown lead on Iowa, which if you're a halfway decent team, you wouldn't think would be too hard, right? They're not going to run the ball. They got to throw it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The more I think about it, yeah, USC would still put up probably 28 on Iowa. But again, I mean, their offense is so fucking bad. Excuse my language, but like they're terrible that you're just throw your defense at such a shitty spot. The problem is this isn't a 1-year deal with Iowa. This has been going on forever. It seems like elite defense. And I think their defense is better than what people think they are. I'm with you. I know they play a lot of the Big Ten West teams, and offensively they suck. I get that. Almost every one of them does. I'm with you. I just think this game, it just surprised me that Iowa being rated at home as an underdog against a Rutgers team who kind of came out of nowhere this year. I mean, Schiano's done a good job over there. They're not a terrible team by any means. I'm with you, man. It'll be a crazy game. Kind of what happens there.
I agree with you, Chris. Moving on real quick here, we'll look at Duke UNC. Kind of a weird game for both these two schools, right?
Yeah, if you're playing basketball. Yeah, two teams that come off the season hot, right? Both teams, big win. Duke over Clemson. North Carolina started rolling over people. And North Carolina, I don't know what the hell they are, where the defense went the last couple of weeks. But yeah, this is who do you lean in this game?
Let's see. Riley Leonard, is he back?
I don't think they know. Last I looked.
Yeah, extended time. I probably lean UNC. I mean, if the game was at home, I'd probably be a little more apt to roll with Duke, right? I think Duke is actually they're a tough environment, especially in those night games too. They played, they played. Notre Dame, really tough, right? But I think not having Riley Leonard really has hurt them. That's good because you got another young quarterback that they're getting experience in there, and I think that's a good thing for them. But yeah, I mean they've done what they need to do this year, and they'll win. You know, if they can win a couple more games, I think they'll be all right. They'll be doing about what we expected, and that's what you want them to do.
Nope, I agree with you there 100%. I think North Carolina wins this one. Duke can't outscore North Carolina. They just can't.
No. Holy Cross, Army, West Point. Look, we don't have to go into the game, but I do want to bring this up. Army got their first win over a top 25 program since 1972.
Bullshit. That long?
No, swear to God. Yeah. That was the last time they've gotten a top. Look it up real quick.
Well, I guess, no, I don't even have to because you think about it. They play Notre Dame every year, right? But they've never been able to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be about the only team on their schedule that's ever rated top 25, right? America's fucking team. But yeah, Air Force being rated as high as they were, and they did crack the top 25 there. That again, that was crazy, by the way. That was a crazy game. I took Army in 18.5 points, and they beat fucking Air Force by about 30. I mean, they destroyed them. Good for your team there, Christian. Interesting stat of the night, baby.
Are you ready to put them into the top 25 yet, Chris?
Who's that? Army?
Army.
Nah, I can't do that yet. No, I can't. Come on, man. You ain't gonna sneak it by me, man.
I'll put them in the top 130.
No, they're Army. Good for them, though, man. Good for a win. That's a crazy stat, man. That's a long freaking time. That's a long time.
Oh yeah. We'll kind of skip through some of these here. Georgia Tech, Clemson. I think that's got a potential to be an interesting game. Georgia Tech's searching for a way. I was looking up an article and they were saying Georgia Tech is obsessed with figuring out how to beat Clemson this week.
Well, good news is that anybody Clemson plays is close. So,
if I'll tell you right now, if Georgia Tech beats Clemson,
oh boy,
that all hell's gonna break loose, right? I mean, you would think.
I would think so. Clemson's usually pretty good at home too. If Georgia Tech comes in there and would beat them, I thought you were gonna go. Do you fire Dabo?
Well, that's kind of the direction I'm going with it, right? I mean, right now, Dabo got that passionate win over Notre Dame, last week, right? And then if you turn around and you lose to Georgia Tech, your fifth loss of the season, by the way. Not only I don't think they would want to fire him, but I think if he keeps making comments, which every time they lose he does, I think that they wouldn't be stopping him from walking out the door. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I don't think Clemson can afford to get rid of him because you're never probably going to get another coach in there like him. But I will say this. Anybody Clemson's played this year's been a close game. Doesn't matter who the hell it is. This game will be close. I almost guarantee it, unless they come out like they did against Notre Dame, because they actually beat the living shit out of Notre Dame last week. But that game was the score didn't indicate how badly that game was. But yeah, there's a lot riding on this for Dabo and the Clemson program. They are 5-4 right now. He needs this to get bowl eligible. I can't believe I just said that, but yeah, crazy.
Yeah. Skipping ahead here, we'll go to your team, a team you you're looking at here, Nebraska and Maryland. 12 o'clock game. It's at Nebraska. You make the argument there. We've seen what Maryland's been all year, right? I mean, not really impressive. They've kind of shit the bed, I think, compared to what we expected from them in the offseason. Nebraska, I think, is in a very weird spot because they are that sixth win, that bowl eligibility win. They are searching for it, and they're right there. I mean, win on Saturday, and you're right there. But what do you think?
I called the Michigan State upset last week, and I didn't want to. I know a lot of people, resident Nebraska fans, think that I'm a hater. I'm not. I'm a realist. The Big Ten West is a dartboard every week. There isn't a single team in the Big Ten West that you can guarantee and bank on winning a game. A la Minnesota last week against Illinois at home. PJ Fleck never loses at home, gets beat. This game to me is scary. And it's scary again because I think this is the we need one win, right? I think that's the most logical. Nebraska fans are sitting here. We just need one win to get bowl eligible, right? It's like you're playing a lottery here. Like, can we just get one? Just one. One of those numbers got to hit in Keno. Just one. And this, to me, is the easiest one. I said that last week. Michigan State should have been that victory because they hadn't got a Big Ten win all year. They're definitely one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. We didn't get it done. It was a trap game. We looked like shit on offensive turnovers. You can name it. Reffing. I don't want to go down that route. But they need this one. We are at home against a Maryland team who is literally, you said it, shit the bed ain't even the word. They were a team that started off 5-0. I don't know if they've won 3 out of the last 4. They've getting beat by teams that Nebraska's beaten. Maryland doesn't seem to know how to play any defense anymore. But then I'm also, this is where it's scary, Christian. I'm on the side of Maryland might be in a bounce back spot here. They've lost enough in a row to Purdue, I think, and Illinois for sure. You name it. I'm losing track anymore these days with these Big Ten West teams. I'm worried here because I think Maryland is going to be able to score some points. They're a better offense than Michigan State is for sure. I don't know if Nebraska can score more than 17. I really, truly don't. And that is where, as good and as much as I love the improved defense this year from Nebraska, Christian, I don't feel confident. I don't feel much confidence in this game. And I'm going to scroll down here. And what time is this game played at? Noon?
Noon.
Here it is. Nebraska's a 3-point underdog. And I almost agree with that line. I really do. At home.
I think there's a couple, and I agree with you. I think there's a couple things that are playing into it for me in this one, and that's number one, the last result, right? Maryland got beat 51-15 by Penn State.
Yeah.
They got their doors rocked in the last 100%. Game. And they also were 5-4. They need to win one more game to get to bowl eligibility.
True.
And I think you look at it too, like the games that they've played, Chris, the Northwesterns, all these games, right? They've been able to put up points. And we'll take last week out of the way there against a pretty good Penn State defense. They've been able to put up points in all these games. So my question is, coming on the road, got to get to win number 6. Let's go to a bowl game here. I guess I feel better in a game that's probably going to come down to Maryland's defense versus Nebraska's offense, both of which you could make the argument have been pretty bad this year. Who are you leaning on? Who do you trust more not to make more mistakes, I guess?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I can't give you an answer tonight, but I'm with you on this, and you're exactly right. I just think, and I don't, like I said, I bet money and sometimes a substantial amount to most people money on games. If this game was played right now at Maryland, they would be 5.5, 6-point favorites. I'm kind of with that. I actually truly believe that like Maryland's probably going to come in, and I just don't know. Christian, you said it. I don't know if Nebraska's offense could score enough points in this game. I don't. I'm worried because they couldn't do it against a bad Michigan State team. They couldn't score more than 21 against the Illinois team that is terrible on defense this year. They did drop 30 on Purdue, but Purdue's probably the worst Big Ten, defense West team for sure. And that was with some turnovers, 4 by Purdue in that game. Mm-hmm. I'm worried, man. I truly but I think this is the best win. I'm worried about looking ahead. We're going to talk about probably Wisconsin here in a second, but that is at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a lot better team at home. And then Iowa. Iowa's probably the best Big Ten team. I think most people would agree currently in the Big Ten West. Anybody can beat anybody in this conference. We've seen that. But as a Nebraska native and a diehard Nebraska fan, man, I'm scared, man. You made a comment to me tonight, Christian. You know what that was? You said Nebraska could win all 3 of these games, and then you could see them just as easily losing all 3 of these games.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? I mean, I think you look at what's the realistic scenario here. Nebraska wins all 3 of these games. Nebraska loses all 3 of these games. Nebraska splits it and goes 1-2 or 2-1, whatever have you. I really believe in my heart of hearts that they have just as good of a chance losing all 3 of these games as they do at winning it. And you can flip that around, right? It's not meant to be negative. It's not meant to be, the Huskers suck. It's not what I'm trying to do here. I really do mean that, like I said, just Maryland can come and play play that game, right, and play a decent game with them and have a shot. Iowa is going to have a great defense, and that's going to compound, I think, Nebraska's offense a little bit more. But, you flip it around, and it's the same thing on the other side, too. It's going to be a coin flip of a game, right? And the Wisconsin thing, right? Wisconsin's got to scare you. I think Braden Locke and this team have looked. They're improving. They're improving. I know the loss last week to, was it Illinois? I mean, that was pretty. Or no, it was Indiana. That's who they lost to last week. Yeah, that was kind of a gut wrencher. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I think Wisconsin's a better team at home than they are on the road, and that's not a fluke thing. So we'll see what happens. Moving on here, Minnesota, Purdue, and then we'll jump into Northwestern Wisconsin. Is there a path for Purdue to beat Minnesota in this one?
Yeah, there is. There is. Anybody in the Big Ten West, Christian, I'll leave it at that. I want to strangle PJ Fleck, like personally. For last week, it costed me $150 in a parlay because he just couldn't win at home against the Illinois team when you had him on 4th and 11. I don't understand the decision on defense there. But Purdue can win this game. I would lean Minnesota. I would lean Minnesota if I had to bet it. I am not going to touch Minnesota. You remember my text message I sent you during that day. I will not touch Minnesota again for the rest of my life. But
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on these two particular teams?
I think Purdue is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
and I think that Minnesota is vying for a spot right now to win the Big Ten East. Or West, I should say. Big Ten West. I mean, it's to me, it's one of those things. Purdue's defense has looked really bad. Minnesota's offense at times has not been great, right? So that all factors into it. I think when you have a team that has a bad defense, I more lean towards the offense on that, right? Man, I would say probably just the fact that it's at home, I'd probably pick Purdue.
Okay. No, and I'm not going to sit here and try to debate you on it because I don't have any ammo. Fuck Minnesota and screw Purdue. I mean, both these teams have really been weird. Minnesota did beat Iowa this year. I think you can make the case for that. But they shit the bed against the Illinois team. That's one of the worst teams, especially in the West. I think Purdue is at the very bottom in the West, if I'm not mistaken. A team that played in the Big Ten title game last year, by the way. Yeah, this is, again, you said it, man. It's just, you just don't know. If you had to probably pick, and, I'm not picking this game, and I could give you what the public or what Vegas thinks this line should be at. We got Purdue favored by 1 at home. That's pretty much the kicker there. So neutral site, pick 'em game. Essentially what it is for Purdue. You might not be wrong, Christian.
Yeah, what makes this so interesting to me here, Chris, is Northwestern and Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin rolls them.
I think Wisconsin. I am gonna, for the last goddamn time on this show, and everybody knows how heartbroken I am about Wisconsin, even though I don't even like them. Thought they were going to be the best Big Ten team in the West or the East this year, or West, excuse me. I think they win this one at home. They have to get it rolling here in the next 3 weeks under Luke Fickell. They got the better coach, Northwestern. I don't even know if they have a coach on the sideline. Northwestern has actually played incredibly good this year. They were a team I thought was probably going to be one of the worst Power 5 conference teams. Has had some big wins. They beat Minnesota. That's one of their big wins this year. They dropped 37 in that game, Christian. 37. Northwestern went into Nebraska the next week and got mollywopped. Turned around and played with somebody a couple weeks ago they shouldn't have been playing with. So I'm with you. I'm going to lean Wisconsin here. I think Wisconsin, after the loss last week, which was disappointing, I think they get a W here. And the Big Ten West just becomes what? More of a clusterfuck?
Was ultimately going to, here's what I think, right? I think enough pandemonium and enough chaos is going to happen because like we said, Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, right? Minnesota, let me scroll back up here. Yeah, Minnesota, they should, I'm going to change my stance a little bit. I think they're going to beat Purdue.
Okay.
I think they beat Purdue. But here's the problem. They play Ohio State next week.
Watch them do the unthinkable.
Well, they might want to keep dreaming if that's the case, by God, because they're going to need to dream a little harder. I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State, and that's going to only muddy it a little bit more. Iowa plays Rutgers this week, so let's say Iowa loses that game, right? Yeah. Minnesota wins this game. All right, now we're kind of inching closer to where we need to be here, and then to kind of end things out, Wisconsin plays Northwestern. That should be a dub for them. It's at home, but then if you're Wisconsin, you got Nebraska coming into town. Let's say Nebraska figures out a way to beat Maryland. Then you got to go on the road. That could be an interesting game, right? That could be an interesting game. We saw sort of a game that happened with Iowa and Wisconsin, right? And to me, that could be something you could see in a way with that Nebraska game where it's a very low-scoring Big Ten style game. And then basically, I think really what could happen, and it's just because I want to see it happen, would be Nebraska and Iowa, that game meaning something. And yeah,
I'm with you. I was thinking about the day driving home from work, and obviously we got on the phone, talked a little bit. And I was going to bring that up. I said, you know what the craziest shit might be? It might be that game coming down to who wins the Big Ten West. If you guys don't remember last year, Nebraska beat Iowa, and Nebraska was horrible last year. They knocked off Iowa out of the Big Ten West game so Purdue could get there. That's what happened. Iowa fans still hate us for it. That's okay. I'm cool with it. But yeah, that would be the tip. That would be the most Big Ten West thing. And all you're getting is a ticket to a complete ass whooping by an Ohio State or Michigan team. So congratulations, enjoy getting beat by Fitty, and then turning around playing an LSU in a bowl game and getting beat by Fitty.
Oh, it won't be an LSU, right? It would probably be either Georgia or Alabama, right? Loser of the SEC championship game.
Don't rub it in, Christian. I can't take any more.
Okay, so I'm not mistaken, right? I think that's part of how the bowl bids are kind of done. Like the runner-up of the Big Ten plays a runner-up of the SEC.
Regardless of record.
So that's how we had Purdue and LSU last year. So, but wouldn't it be some shit, though, if you guys had to play Georgia? If somehow Bama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game and they didn't make it into the Final Four?
Yeah, so you got an unranked Nebraska team at like 85 playing a ranked number 6 team in the country, Georgia. Yeah,
number 5 team in the
country. Yeah, sign me up for that one. Give me the Nebraska money line plus like 10,000. Yeah, I'm on it.
Oh man. Well, guys, listen. This is a good point, I think, to probably end the show right here. But we're actually got a wedding we got to go to this weekend. So what we'll do is we'll be we're taking this weekend off basically, but we're gonna get back into it again. Have a strong finish to the year. The next couple of weeks, and so we'll see you guys probably on the next Wednesday show. Chris, I'll let you sign us out.
Yeah, no, Christian said it best, man. We won't be around this weekend. That's okay, guys. I'm gonna watch still a ton of football. Christian, I know, will be all over it. We do appreciate you guys chatting in here. I know we didn't have a ton of time tonight to be able to chat with you guys, but we do appreciate the support. You guys are what make the show, man. I love hearing it from every angle and all your guys' your team. So I appreciate the support. Like, comment, subscribe. Like I say every week, we're not begging for it. We're out though. Love y'all.